Hello everyone, welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why and how of newspaper reading. Today we shall analyze the Hindu newspaper Delhi edition dated 13th of March. The topics we'll be discussing has been presented on the screen. The time stamping for the same has been given in the description section. Let us begin our today's discussion. The first article that we are going to pick for today's discussion is editorial article from page number 10. It's titled Danger Ahead. Basically, this article is based on road accident, and we are going to cover road accident holistically in our discussion. See, road administration is a hot topic, and it also forms part of GS Paper 2 syllabus under Polity and Governance. And related information to road administration, for example, committees that were set recently on road safety, International Convention on Road Safety, they all are very important for prelims examination. Further, nothing has been asked directly as such from this topic, so the chances of a question being asked from this topic this year or next year increases multiple times. All in all, it's a very important topic for prelims and mains, so let's begin the discussion. The present picture of road safety in India is very, very grim. According to the data released by Ministry of Road Transport and Highway, 1.5 lakh people die out of road accident every year in India. This is way too high. And this has remained more or less same since 2015, but has increased substantially from 2001. If you look at it from the perspective of per lakh population, then also the number is very high. It's around 18.9 in India compared to 11 in Bangladesh. Recently, a report by World Bank titled Delivering Road Safety in India was released, and this report highlighted the fact that rapid motorization and a high-speed road infrastructure has actually increased the risk of road users. And this has become one of the causes of high road accident and fatalities in India. But recently, there was some data released highlighting some reduction in number of crashes that has happened on national highways. And the Minister of Road Transport and Highway, Mr. Nitin Gadkari, took a note of it. And he took the opportunity to highlight the benefit that has incurred due to the amendment to the Motor Vehicle Act 1988 that was done last year. But that alone cannot be the sole cause of reduction of road accident, although that will be one of the important prominent factor in it. So first thing is that we are going to look at the amendments that were done last year, and then we will see at it holistically as to what are the major causes of road accident challenges and how we can overcome that. So let me quickly ride you through the changes amendment that were done last year in the Motor Vehicle Act 1988. First thing is the penalties were increased. Penalties for everything, drunken driving, even if the manufacturer is not adhering to the motor vehicle standard of India, then penalty of up to rupees 100 crore was set by the amendment. But those numbers are not important. So I'm not throwing those numbers at you, and neither you should be interested in that. But however, you should know that penalties against the traffic violations has been made more stringent. Secondly, compensation for road accident victims has been increased. Previously, it was just 50,000 for death or grievous injuries. That was increased to 2 lakh. Apart from that, treatment of road accident victim during golden hour were made free. That is within 1 hour of the road accident. Apart from this, National Road Safety Board has been formed with the amendment, and this is basically an advisory body for the central and state government both. There's one important amendment that you have to know regarding Good Samaritan. Good Samaritan basically are people who render emergency medical or non-medical assistance to a victim at the scene of accident. And the amendment, very important amendment that has been done concerning Good Samaritan was that they will not be liable for any civil or criminal action that might have incurred because in the process of giving help to the accident victim. Suppose the accident victim has been brought to the hospital and has been declared as to be brought dead. Then there will be no liability on the Good Samaritan. Motor Vehicle Accident Fund has been formed by the amendment to the Act, and this is a very important multi-purpose fund. First important purpose of the fund is to enable compulsory insurance. Apart from that, whatever compensations that we have talked above, that will come from this fund. This fund can also be used to disburse loan to whomsoever the central government decide. And concerning road administrations, the amendment has brought some changes. Although those changes has not been implemented on ground yet, but that has been envisaged in the Act via amendment. For example, motor vehicle fitness must be automated, driving tests to be computerized, to remove corruption and human error that creeps in. Driver training process for commercial driving will be strengthened and more training schools to be set up by the Act. But these changes will take time to get implemented on the ground. Another important change in the Act is concerning the recall of the vehicle. Suppose a vehicle is defected or can damage the environment or the user or others, then in that case, the manufacturer of the vehicle is liable to recall the vehicle and complete compensation has to be given to the buyer. You have to remember this very, very important point that National Transportation Policy, India doesn't have it yet. And the Act has exhorted the central government to come up with a national transportation policy in consultation with the state government. So Act directs it to the government, but this policy has not been framed yet. There's one very important issue concerning taxi aggregators, and the Act now defines taxi aggregators because it's important to define, to monitor them, to make them accountable, also to give them license and their administration. So the taxi aggregators has been defined as digital intermediaries or marketplaces, which can be used by passengers to connect with a driver for transportation purpose. What you have to remember is there's a definition in the Act itself of the taxi aggregators. And those taxi aggregators, because they are using the digital media, so they have to comply with the Information Technology Act 2000. So this is about the amendment that were done to the Motor Vehicle Act 1988 last year. Now let's discuss the issue of road safety in a more holistic manner. Let me also take this opportunity to discuss one aspect of answer writing with you. The thing is, when you discuss or think of the cause of anything, the first thing that should prop up in your mind is legislation and policies. Whether we have any legislation or policy regarding that or not. That's the first thing. If we have, do we have institutional mechanism, institutional capacity to implement the vision of the policy and whatever mandate that has made in the legislation? Once these three things are okay, then you move on to as how the administration is being run by the institution, what are the lacunas in that. Then you can talk about other things, whether we have infrastructure in place or not. Then we'll talk about the people's behavior, people's cooperation, people's participation, whether that's there or not, and whether we are using the latest technology or not. But this is a general structure that you can use for anything. For example, if you want to talk about urbanization, if you want to talk about forest conservation, any issue that you come across, think in this line, whether we have a policy on that or not, whether we have legislation giving effect to the vision of the policy, whether we have any institution that will implement the mandate of the legislation. If we have these three, then how about the administration? How is the administration being run by the institution and the provision of the law? Then you talk about the enabling infrastructures, people behavior and technology. So let's apply this template to road safety. First thing is, do we have a legislation? Yes, we have Motor Vehicle Act since 1988. But the problem was that the provisions were not very stringent. So we have a solution already, that Motor Vehicle Amendment Act 1919. But now all the things that we have discussed above, that needs to be implemented. And as we have discussed, everything will not be implemented immediately. For example, we discussed that in the golden hour, the medical assistance will be free. But medical assistance as such cannot be free unless you make the medical treatment cashless. Otherwise, if you don't have cash at that very time, actually you're not going to get it. Okay, so every provisions that's there in the amendment, some enabling provisions also has to be made in order for those provisions to be implemented. Right? Then policy. We signed Brasilia Declaration in 2015. Brasilia Declaration is regarding road safety. The signatory countries have targeted to reduce the road fatalities and accident to half by 2020. But we signed this in 2015, but we didn't have a policy in place. That happened only in 2017. And this policy did not have an enabling legislation. And that has happened only in 2019. So you can talk like this. So what's the problem and what is the state? If you have a policy, say it has to be implemented, the provisions. If you don't have a policy, say we need a policy, right? Like that. Then we talk about institutional capacity. Do we have institutions in place? Yeah, but there are problems. The problems are about general human resources and the budget constraints of Public Works Department. So what can be done is 10% of the fund must be earmarked for maintenance. And apart from that, for human resource capability, vocational training courses on road constructions can be done in ITIs, which are presently not done prominently. Then you talk about general road administrations. For example, see, National Safety Board, as we have discussed above, why the amendment has been created, but it must be made operational. Another problem in road administration is regarding collection and analysis of data, which is not done prominently. So the suggestion is Transport Data Center at national level for applied research on roads should be established and made operational. Another issue in road administration is about black spots. Black spots are those regions which are very, very vulnerable for road accidents. Ministry has come up with various mobile applications for citizens to report those black spots. However, more prompt action is required after reporting to rectify those black spots. IT-enabled traffic management system will make the road administration efficient. The amendment has mandated for computerized testing of driving skills, but infrastructure needs to be created for that to happen at ground. One important issue is accountability of contractors. See, these issues of black spots and the issue of not maintaining the road properly, the contractors are not held accountable for that. And this is a big issue. And this needs to be rectified, and some more amendments is required in the legislation to hold the contractors accountable. Now let's talk about infrastructure. This problem with infrastructure concerning road administration. Only 6% of the roads are highways, and only 22% of the highways are 4-lane highways. So you can see there's a serious constriction in the road infrastructure. What can be done is the present infrastructure projects that are going on should be speeded up. For example, Bharatmala Pariyojana 1. Apart from that, there has to be some fund earmarked for maintenance, and Central Road and Infrastructure Fund should be used for this purpose. Presently, there is no fund earmarked for maintenance, and the suggestion is that 10% of the fund should be earmarked for maintenance purpose only. This is very important fund, Central Road and Infrastructure Fund. Previously it used to be Central Road Fund, but now it has been changed to Central Road and Infrastructure Fund because this will not only be used for road infrastructure, it could be used for inland shipping, railways as well. And this is managed by Ministry of Finance. Then you can talk about other things related with peoples, their cooperation, their behavior. For example, unauthorized speed breakers that people make, and not using helmets, over speeding. These are lapses on the side of citizens. So what can be done is, first of all, awareness about road accident. Then commercial vehicle drivers, they should be trained properly, and they should be licensed only after rigorous testing, perhaps computerized testing. Then you can talk about certain latest technology that can be incorporated. For example, IT-enabled traffic management system that we have talked about, or new technology that you come across reading newspaper for construction of road using plastics or anything like that. You can add in that because you can find solution to any problem using technology. So if you have this in your template to discuss any topic, this will always be helpful. The next article we are taking from page number 14. It's a very important article to be covered under IR of GS paper 2. The title is Why Are Oil Prices Crashing? Let's see why. But you should be aware that the oil prices has crashed to lowest since 1991, and in last few days the cut in oil prices has been 50% to what was prevailing just few days back. There's a huge slump in the oil price, and it's important to understand why. Let's see what's happening here. For that, I have to tell you a few things. First thing is, there's an organization called as OPEC, Organization for Petroleum Exporting Countries. And until few years, they were calling the shots in the oil market. They have 40% share in the crude oil production and 60% in the crude oil trade. Altogether, there are 14 countries presently in the OPEC after the exit of Qatar last year. And within OPEC, the king of oil market is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has 10% of share in the crude oil market. So obviously, OPEC and Saudi Arabia will have interest in keeping the prices of the oil high. But it's not only OPEC. There are other countries who have similar interests, and the other country, the most prominent among them, is Russia. Russian economy is also oil-based economy, however, not so much as Saudi Arabia, because Russian economy also has very developed defense industry, which others don't have. However, Russian economy also is largely dependent upon oil and gas industry. So the interests of OPEC and Russia are similar, and to cooperate on this matter, they have created a platform called as OPEC Plus. OPEC Plus is basically OPEC plus Russia. And they have come to an agreement called as Vienna Agreement in 2016. As per this agreement, they will decide through consensus on the production levels in order to finally decide the prices of the oil in the market. As you understand, oil is a commodity traded internationally, and the price will depend upon the supply and demand. So, if you control the supply, you can control the price. And it is of their interest to control the price, so they are cooperating. Very well. But the problem is the present oil price is crashing because Russia is not on board. Russia has not decided to cut its oil production, so the price is slumping, even though OPEC country has decided so. So the question to be asked is why Russia has not cut down its production level. See, Russia and Saudi has similar interests. However, there's difference. The difference, first of all, arises from the fact that since they have similar interests, so they are also kind of competitor. They are competitor of each other, and especially in the Chinese market, they compete with each other. And the advantage that Russia has is of proximity. Russia is developing pipeline to directly supply oil and gas to China. So Russia has some interest there in not reducing the production level. And if at all the buyers are buying, then Russia is to gain at the cost of Saudi Arabia. So that is one thing that explains why Russia is not cutting down the production level. Another thing is the equation of Russia and Saudi are different. Saudi Arabia is not a rival of USA, not at all. Russia is. And you would know that from 2014, USA started production of shale gas and shale oil. And after that, Russia and Saudi Arabia decided to increase their production, so to artificially keep the prices of oil low, and that will make it unviable for USA to extract shale oil, because shale oil extraction is very difficult. USA doesn't have oil wells like Saudi Arabia and Russia. Extraction of shale oil requires high-end technology, and especially for a new player, USA was not a major oil producing country, it will be very difficult. So Russia has another strategic interest of hurting USA. That explains as to why Russia is not reducing the oil production. But be as it may, India stands to gain from this, and the import bill of India is going to reduce drastically. You would be aware that 80% of India's oil requirement is from the imports, and it's estimated if there is $1 reduction per barrel of oil, then $1.2 billion reduction is in the import bill of India. So India stands to gain from this. Of course, if the oil import bill is going to reduce, then the current account deficit is also going to reduce. By extension, the appreciation of rupee will also happen. And because of the lower prices of oil, that is going to have cascading effect in the economy. Transportation is going to become cheaper, production is going to become cheaper, and inflation is supposed to come down. So all the major macroeconomic parameters will be affected because of this. Now you would tell me, will there be any possible negative impact on India because of the reducing oil prices and the hurt that the OPEC economy and the Russian economy will face because of this? In the comment section. There's an important article on page number 15. It's titled RBI opens dollar swap window. That means RBI is going to swap dollar for rupee. Let's understand why RBI needs to do so. There is economic slowdown presently in the world. How do we know? From the demand data. In the last article we saw, China cut its oil import by 20%. This signals slowing down of economic activities. Presently, that is largely because of coronavirus. But this economic slowdown is across the world. And there is a fear that this economic slowdown may turn into global economic recession. And whenever there's such a fear, there is always outflow of FPIs, foreign portfolio investments. Foreign portfolio investors, they fly away from less secure developing market to a more secure market, mostly United States. And when they fly away, in our case, the rupee will depreciate. Because when they come with their dollars, they need to exchange that. They demand rupee, and that increases the demand of rupee, and hence the rupee appreciates. Now when they are gone, there is no demand for rupee. So when the demand decreases, the cost decreases. In this case, the exchange rate will decrease. So there is depreciation of rupee, and that is the cause of our concern that rupee is depreciating. That will affect our trade, that will affect our import bill, that will affect our current account deficit, that will affect ultimately inflation, consumers. So macroeconomic stability is going to be affected. That is why exchange rate is tried to be kept constant. How can it be kept constant? It can be kept constant by undoing the effect of flying away of FPIs. FPI has gone means dollars are gone. So if dollars are artificially injected into the market, then the effect will be mitigated. And that's exactly what RBI tends to do through this dollar swap window. See what's going to happen. There is RBI and there are banks. RBI is going to sell dollar to the banks. And banks are going to buy dollar, giving rupee to RBI. So in this, what will effectively happen is banks are going to get dollar and they're going to use it. And effectively in the economy, dollars will be injected. So the dollars which are gone by the FPIs flying away, that effect will be mitigated. So the exchange rate to a certain extent will be stabilized. Right? So that's what is going to happen. And later on, after the period of 6 months. So for 6 months, RBI is going to sell and sell and sell dollar. And after 6 months, RBI will buy these dollars back. When the situation will stabilize, when the market will stabilize, RBI is going to buy back. So this time the dollar is going to come back from the bank to RBI. And RBI is going to give back rupee to the banks. So effectively what will happen, temporarily the effect of flying away of FPI will be mitigated. And that's what this exchange, foreign exchange sell buy swap of RBI aims to achieve. Pretty simple. Just like repo rate, reverse repo rate, just like the government security works between RBI and banks, in the same way, but the thing is it is being done for the first time. It was done the reverse way before RBI. RBI was actually buying dollar few years back. But for the first time, RBI is selling dollar to stabilize the exchange rate. And this is pretty simple. The mechanism you would understand works the same way as repo rate or the reverse repo rate works. Nothing new. So whatever we have discussed, I have written it down in the form of text. RBI plans to infuse around 2 billion USD for the tenure of next 6 months. Now this is a huge sum of money, and if the need be, the governor is ready to pump in more dollars. Effectively what will happen is exchange rate will be stabilized, the depreciation will be arrested and rupee will be appreciated to some extent. The exchange rate volatility will be stabilized. But as you would understand, the dollar that RBI is bringing, it will bring from its forex reserve. So forex reserve is going to decrease for some time, but that is not an issue because our forex reserve is well above the safe level. And you would tell me in the comment section, what is our present forex reserve? There's a very important news on page number 13. It deals with the accountability of social media platforms. The title is Social Media Platforms to be Made Accountable. And in the current scenario, this news is very, very important for the mains exam. Recently, the Minister of Electronics and Information Technology has informed that Information Technology Intermediaries Guideline Rules 2011 will be released to make the intermediaries more responsive and accountable. Intermediaries basically are the platforms which enable messages to be sent from the sender and to the receiver. For example, WhatsApp, it's an intermediary. All the social media platforms, they all are intermediaries. The search engine, Google, it's also an intermediary. The web hosts, they all are intermediaries. Anyone who is just an enabler for the flow of information, but is not the publisher, they all are intermediaries. The thing is that in December 2018, government released a draft Information Technologies Intermediaries Guideline Amendment Rules 2018. And it seeks to amend Section 79 of Information Technology Act. Section 79 of IT Act 2000 deals with intermediaries' liability. Meaning if something goes wrong, then will they be held accountable or not? And this was important also because in the backdrop of the rate with which the fake news is propagating and the scale of harm which it can cause in the form of violence and otherwise, and also some of the issues like child pornography and other objectionable content that roams around, it's important that some kind of accountability are brought into these platforms. So the first question to be asked is, who are intermediaries? As we've already discussed, but intermediaries are also actually defined in the IT Act 2000. You have to know this. And any intermediary is defined in the Act as any person who, on behalf of another person, stores or transmits a message, information, or provides any service with respect to that message, but they are not the publisher of that message. And internet service providers, even the cyber cafes, web hosters, search engines, social media platforms, they all are intermediaries, as you would understand. So what was the intermediary liability so far? So far, we can say that there was liability protection regime. By law, they were not bound to do anything. But the law IT Act 2000 did have a provision in section 79 that intermediaries have to apply due diligence on content that is grossly harmful, obscene, etc. But it was a kind of step that they have to do by themselves without any external accountability or imposition of any accountability by law. But now things are going to change, and the suggested liability that will be imposed and that has been suggested in the draft are as follows. First of all, there is a liability of monitoring the content, and it is the liability of the intermediaries that they deploy appropriate technologies. They proactively identify, remove, or disable access to harmful contents. It's very important for you to know that in Shreya Singhal case, it was said that intermediaries cannot take down any content because that case was meant towards freedom of speech, and to promote that, intermediaries have to take orders from the government or the court in order to do that. But now the draft guideline is suggesting and imposing the liability on intermediaries to proactively identify, remove, and disable access to harmful content. And there will be some consequences of this we will discuss shortly. Another liability that's going to be imposed is to notice and take down the content. Intermediaries are liable to inform the users to refrain from hosting, uploading, or sharing any content that is blasphemous, obscene, defamatory, or is a threat for national security. They have to be informed, and every month this notice has to be sent to the users to not get involved into such activities to share such content. Then there is very important, this is very important liability imposed on intermediaries, traceability of content. Intermediaries will be liable to identify, to trace out the originator, the source of unlawful content on its platform. Now it's important for us to understand how this is going to work out. See, if someone is the originator of any unlawful content, then in order to identify that, in order to continuously monitor that, we have to break the encryption. As you understand, many of the social media platforms like WhatsApp, they use end-to-end encryption. So only the sender and the receiver will know. But if only the sender and receiver will know, then how are you going to continuously monitor that? How are you going to trace it out? Unless you get a complaint and then you start it, otherwise continuous monitoring is not possible if there is end-to-end encryption, right? So this may result into loss of end-to-end encryption of some of the platforms. This you have to bear in mind. Then there is another liability imposed on intermediaries that they have to be present in the form of a corporate office if they have 50 lakh active users in India. So these are 4 important liabilities that the draft suggests to impose on intermediaries. Hand in hand, let's discuss the possible implication of imposing these liabilities on intermediaries. First of all, if you're imposing that monitoring of the content has to be done continuously, there are problems. Now you have said that you have to deploy, intermediaries have to deploy some technology, but the problem is that even AI and machine learning are not good enough to accurately understand the human context and then judge what is lawful, what is unlawful, what is obscene, what is okay. That will be difficult. So just imposing this liability on intermediaries and saying that you have to deploy appropriate technology sounds little passing the buck of responsibility from the government to the intermediaries. Then there will be problem with freedom of speech that has been guaranteed under Article 19 to the citizens, and also the right to privacy. Because if you're going to proactively censor, the things are going to become subjective. And the fundamental right of freedom of speech and the right to privacy provided by the Constitution that may be infringed upon. And in the landmark judgment of Shreya Singhal case of 2015, Supreme Court acknowledged the importance of protecting the intermediary to enable free speech in India. Right? So there's going to be some implication of this, and how it's going to turn out, because it's still in the draft stage, we'll have to wait and watch. Then, if the intermediaries has been imposed with this liability to give notice to the users and take it down, then again there's going to be problem. As it was said in Shreya Singhal judgment, that intermediary will take down objectionable content from its website upon acquiring actual knowledge of the same by means of judicial or governmental order. But now they have to proactively do it. So what will happen to this judgment, whether the draft is going to overpower the judgment, it's something that we'll have to again see. Then traceability of content we have talked about. This could result in the break of end-to-end encryption because it's very difficult to trace to what's passing through the bus. Then this issue of permanent office is also difficult because India has 350 million internet users. But in the draft it's written if we have more than 50 lakh active users. Now how many are active users? This may become sometime very difficult to identify. So these are the issues related with this news. As and when it will evolve, we'll keep on discussing this, but for time being, this is sufficient. We will just be touching on this article. It's taken from page number 9. It's titled New Environment Law Cuts Time for Hearing. Recently, a draft notification on environment impact assessment has been released, and this is what the article deals with. Now, since it's at draft stage, the changes it seeks to make is not very particularly important to know, although you should have a little bit of idea as to what it's trying to do. But this topic, environment impact assessment, is very important. It's mentioned by name in the syllabus of GS paper 3 under the environment section. There are only few topics mentioned: conservation, environmental pollution and degradation, and then environmental impact assessment. So any changes that's being made concerning environmental impact assessment, you should be abreast with. What it's basically trying to do, the draft notification, is to speed up the process of environment impact assessment and make it less hectic. For instance, the response time, which is presently minimum of 30 days during the process of EIA, the draft notification seeks to reduce it down to 20 days. Similarly, public hearing that was to be done within 45 days will be done, if the draft provision will be accepted, to be 40 days. And the monitoring for compliance that was to be done every 6 months will now be done annually. That's it, making it less hectic, more comfortable, and reducing the time period that EIA generally takes. But this is still at the draft stage. You have to keep an eye at it as to what will be the final changes made. I'll just be telling you two little things concerning EIA. These regulations and notifications are given out under the provision of the law. And the law is Environment Protection Act 1986. There's a section in Environment Protection Act 1986, Section 3. This Section 3 empowers the government to take all measures that it deems necessary or expedient for the purpose of protecting and improving the quality of environment. Environment impact assessment, this is done under the provision of Section 3 of Environment Protection Act 1986. This you should bear in mind. But you should also know that even eco-sensitive zone, they are also regulated under the provision of Section 3 of Environment Protection Act 1986. Let's summarize that we have learned in last half an hour or so. These are the important points that you have to bear in mind for prelims examination. We began our discussion with that article on road safety. We discussed that delivering road safety in India, this is a report released by World Bank. Brasilia Declaration is related with road safety. Central Road and Infrastructure Fund, this is managed by Finance Ministry. India does not have national transportation policy yet. Integrated Road Accident Database, this is being prepared by India with the help of fund and expertise coming from World Bank. OPEC Plus, this is a platform essentially between OPEC countries and Russia. And they have come to an agreement, Vienna Agreement. This is an agreement of OPEC Plus. Section 79 of IT Act 2000, this deals with intermediary liability. And you have to know that intermediaries have been defined in the IT Act 2000. We also saw Shreya Singhal judgment, which was related with freedom of speech. You must know and understand and satisfy yourself that if foreign portfolio investment fly away, that result in depreciation of rupee. See to it that you understand this direct link between these two. EIA notification are released under the provision of Section 3 of Environment Protection Act 1986. These are the most important pointers that should remain in your mind for the coming prelims examination. Let's discuss two questions based on our discussion that we had. Question number 1, OPEC countries represent the major oil exporters of the world. In this context, which of the following are the members of OPEC? Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, Russia, Qatar, Iran. See, we discussed that Russia is not the member of OPEC, and OPEC countries collaborate with Russia on OPEC Plus platform. So if you just eliminate Russia, then you will reach to the answer. And anyways, you also know that Qatar pulled out of OPEC in 2018. And anyways, you have to know all the 14 countries in OPEC. So it's not going to be a big deal for you, I hope. By the way, do you know where is the headquarters of OPEC? If you don't, then Google. Question number 2, consider the following statement regarding avian influenza. Person-to-person transmission is possible. It has high fatality rate among humans. There is no vaccine developed for avian influenza. See, we did not discuss this, but this has appeared in today's newspaper with the title Avian flu confirmed at 3 places in Kerala. And diseases UPSC asked in the prelims examination. So from that perspective, it's important. Person-to-person transmission is possible, but it is very less. Predominant transmission pathway is not person-to-person in case of avian influenza, but it is possible. So the statement is correct. It has high fatality rate among humans. It's also correct. It's around 60%. So indeed it is high. There is no vaccine developed for avian influenza. It's incorrect. We do have vaccine against avian influenza. So the answer is option A. Now let's take up the question for the day. The question is, Brazilian declaration that is often in news is related to which of the following? Road safety, afforestation, climate change, or data protection?